Hey, let's get this kindling party started. I'm out here today and we're going to show you all about kindling, several different types. Let's get started on it. Got my trusty blue and white cup loaded with coffee ready to go. Let me point out something to you. This is the size wood that I burn in my fireplace in the house. Now, if I were going to ignite that, I would need some tinder or a fire starter, and then I would need kindling. And the size kindling that I would have to use would be like this. To properly ignite that big log, I would have to start with some tinder or a fire starter. And then I would start with some about this size for my kindling. This is bigger than whatever I'm starting it with, whether it be a fire starter or whether it be tinder. So I would need some of this, and then I would keep breaking it off, and then I would eventually move and lay some this size. This is still kindling size for that big log, okay? And then eventually I would move up to this thickness here. And once I had a good established fire going with this size kindling, I would then put my big logs on and they would catch fire. But let's say I was using something else. Maybe I want to build a fire in this twig stove, or as some people call it, a hobo stove. It's just a tin can stove, and it works great for a small fire for just cooking on one skillet or even just to warm your hands up. But if I were going to use this, I would not have kindling big as my thumb. I would have the very small kindling because why? Because my fuel that I would use to keep this fire going would be my thumb size or smaller. Now today, instead of tinder, I'm going to use, well, some people still call it tinder. I had one commenter, one of my subscribers, who says that this is tinder, but this is fat wood, or as we call it here in the South, fat lighter. It smells just like you opened a bottle of Pine Sol and were about to clean something with it. I'll place a bunch of them in there. And then once the fire gets going good, then I'll move on up to my fuel size. Let me show you what that'll look like. Then you can move up to this size. This would be considered fuel size all the way up to, that's about the same size as my thumb. We could actually burn this once we get a good established fire. So let's go ahead and do that. I've got some fat lighter in the twig stove. We're fixing to ignite it. Okay, the lighter has been ignited. Let's go ahead and just start throwing in some twigs. The good thing about this hobo stove is you can just throw stuff in. You really don't have to be that careful with how you put it in there. That little bit of kindling that I threw in there is doing its job, and now it's time to go ahead and throw some fuel size in. Got a lot of wind blowing out here this morning. There's a cold front coming through, but I absolutely love a twig stove. They're so efficient. But kindling comes in all forms, shapes, and sizes. Here is a bunch of 2x4s and other material from my shop that was scraps. And I simply just split it up and I use it in my fireplace in the house. It makes wonderful, wonderful kindling. And then again, as I look out there on the hillside going up from my driveway, there's probably 100 twigs and small branches that were blown off by a recent storm that came through. And I've got to go out there and pick them up. But you know what? It's free kindling.